Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is a very special webinar slash talk with our guest HR expert, Tina Garola. Hello, Tina.
Hi, Anissa. Hello,
So
everyone.
thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So today we are in we're in 50 something talks that we've done since April in our summit called Leading in a Crisis, Actionable Business and HR Strategies for Navigating Crisis and Change. And with our talk today, it's really going to be a dialogue around COVID-19's impact and HR's priorities. We want to talk with Tina about the real lessons that she's learning in the mix, on site with her team, with her leaders, with the executive suite that she shares her peers with, and figure out what has been the best practices and what has worked well and what hasn't worked so well. So we're going to get started really quick here and move on. I want to say thank you to our sponsors real quickly. I want to say thank you to the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David Whitmarsh and his team of ultra talented multi-channel marketing experts are ready and on call to support organizations as they pivot their marketing and their even their product lines, etc., to respond to what's happening today in today's market. I also want to say thank you to Insperity. When I reached out to Insperity and asked them, would you consider sponsoring this summit? I don't know what exactly we're going to do, but I know we're going to, try to bring talks of value and experts and thought leaders who have expertise in managing a crisis like this into a series that hopefully will be helpful. And they didn't hesitate. They said, absolutely, what do you need? And I said, well, would you give something away for free? And sure enough, they put together this HR financial analysis report and debrief. And it's kind of a big deal. It's anywhere from 3 to, I think, as many as 10 hours worth of analysis for free. We know that HR budgets are very different in May of 2020 compared to what they might have been in even February of this year. And they take a systematic analysis, compare your organization with what other organizations of similar shapes, sizes, and change, and support you in figuring out, well, where can we be effective and efficient? Where do we need to put our attention on and what have you? So if that's supportive, they know that not everyone that takes advantage of this free report is a good fit for them as customers, but they're still offering it. So head on over to turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report if you think that would be supportive. Last little piece I want to introduce you guys to is something that our internal team of strategists has put together. And it's basically a pivot strategy planning, data-driven process wherein leadership teams, both in the nonprofit as well as for-profit sectors, as well as divisions and departments, can take their strategy, turn it inside out, and then realign as a team. So if you guys are in that position, we would love to have the opportunity to share a little bit more. So give me a buzz on that. A little bit about me. My name is Anissa Avon, and I am the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a single source solution for all things learning and development, including outplacement services. These days, we're just doing virtual training, but of course, coaching services, strategic planning, etc. And in our summit, we've had nearly 60 experts so far. We're going to continue going through June of this year, every Wednesday and Thursday. And that brings me to my dear colleague and friend, Tina Mitchell Garola. Tina is an experienced senior HR leader with more than 22 years in human resources. She is presently serving as the senior HR leader for an organization of 1,000 plus employees out in Anaheim, California. She is experienced in HR strategy management, talent acquisition and development, recruiting. In fact, if I remember correctly, you got your start in recruiting and staffing. Was that right?
I did. Way back when.
Ago, right? Talent acquisition and development, let's see, benefits administration, legal compliance, HR consulting, training, employee. So you get the idea. Tina, your experience is impressive. And
Thank you.
what I also know is impressive is you and I have had a number of conversations around people strategy and the importance of people and the thought leadership that you bring to your HR department, but also to RDS. And that's why I was hoping you would come on today and just share with us, how are things going and what are you doing over there?
Absolutely. Yes. So I think to maybe start off, so many in this day and age, this time of COVID-19, this came at all of us fast and furious, and we really didn't have good insight on how to manage, at least not in my career or in my lifetime even. Have I ever had to take an entire workforce and shift them to remote working in some situations within a 24-hour window? And so really just trying to assess how to make that move, make it quickly, make it effective, and then how to manage and maintain thereafter has been the focal point since, I have to be honest, day one, up through probably an hour ago today. And we continue to evolve. It is a challenge. And I know I have conversation with many of my peers. We jump on phone calls and they say, Tina, what are you guys doing? How did you navigate through this? And I tell them, I'm humbled by the fact you're calling, but we are all in this same boat. And, sharing best practice and managing through that, I think has helped us to be so successful with it.
Yeah. So when you look back, what was one of the first hurdles that you had to overcome?
So I think for us, many of the office employees did not have the ability to work from home. Many had desktops. To be able to orchestrate with IT the numerous laptops that were needed, to get them configured and structured and spyware on them and managing the internal piece to then transition them to home, I think that was the first challenge when we realized these shelter in place protocols were coming state by state, county by county. And I don't think anybody was truly prepared for that. Because we were deemed an essential business, we had to scramble quickly to make sure that we executed that. And I use the word flawlessly because I used it with the team. Like, we have no room for error. It has to be a flawless execution. And so the planning and prep really was a 48-hour window, but we were able to manage from that place going forward because Northern California started with the shelter in place. We have locations there, and we mirrored everything that we did in NorCal throughout the US.
Okay. So there was a bit of a pilot approach, maybe not planned, but it ended up giving you guys an opportunity in NorCal to figure out how are we going to do this, and then learn from that and cascade it through the rest of the organization.
Absolutely.
So when you think about, so how did you manage? Let's just take one of those challenges, to get all of the employees on laptops. Did you guys have to purchase laptops, or did you set up a reimbursement plan?
We did. IT purchased what feels like hundreds of laptops in a very short amount of time. And of course, we are not the only organization that was deemed essential. What started happening is supply was depleted quickly. ThinkPads, HP, Dell, you name it, we searched everywhere. And at some point, that supply ran out quickly. And we then jumped into action and said, then everybody takes their desktops home.
Yeah.
And we did that, just to make sure that we were effective remotely. Business operations were not negatively impacted. And we did it very quickly to make sure that on Friday they were in the office and on Monday they were working from home.
Wow. So how did you educate your team of, hey, I know you guys are at your desk today, but by tomorrow, we're going to be doing this. How did you maneuver that?
So I am kind of that strange, weird, anal person who likes process, policy, protocol. And so the HR team sat down one afternoon on a conference call for what felt like hours and structured protocols for everything. The employees that did not have the experience of working from home or working remotely, we gave them very specific instructions on how to do and what to do from each of their managers. On the forefront of that, we structured protocols for all of the managers on how to manage a workforce from home or remotely. And so this way, on both sides, they were effective, they had protocol, they had process. And to be honest, as crazy as I sound, it was pretty seamless because we gave them the data and the detail. Most know what you're supposed to do day to day. You know your job, you know how it functions. If you are unable to have some kind of printing capability at home, talk to your manager. Can I scan it and send it, email it? What do we need to do? So we work through some of those challenges, but the process and the structure for a manager, how do you manage your workforce at home? Schedule daily calls, require everyone to be on Skype, set clear expectations for your employees, do a check-in at the end of the day, ask your employees for just a quick bullet point on what their day entailed. Giving them some structure to follow help them to be successful.
How did you put a blueprint like that together on a dime?
I will tell you, a portion of the HR team works remotely now. And so you just pull from your toolbox, okay, what do I do? How do I manage? How can I help this department, that department, based on what they do to be successful? Well, when you take from that and you use that as the baseline, you can then help those managers per department structure what they need to be successful.
Did you have any particular employees that didn't take well to remote work, and how do you manage that?
So I think it is more based on the fact that many throughout the US have children that they now had to homeschool and get a job done. And so just talking to those employees and saying, here's how you can create some balance. You know, I take from a personal perspective, I have three, two of which are twins. And they're working diligently. They're a little bit older, but you share, you know, here are some suggestions. Here's what I've heard from other employees. Here's what I'm doing to help them be successful and organize themselves better. That has helped many to be productive because this is so new to so many. We had to find ways to help people to be effective.
So how did you, I mean, we're talking a 1,000 employee unit, right? So how did you help your managers identify when someone was struggling?
So we have regional HR managers and then myself. And so each regional HR manager is responsible for their division or their region. And then what I would do is work with the HR team, and then they work with their respective managers so that everyone gets this one touch, very personal direction based on their department, based on geographics, etc., to help them to be successful. Because although I would love to conquer the world, we need a team of people to execute this to make it successful. So this is how we continue to manage from day one up through present day, because each county has a different mandate, each state has a different mandate, but the county mandate supersedes the state. So there's a lot of data that we have to dig through and then help those managers manage their people.
So you said everyone has had, you know, touch points. Everyone has had human touch points. And did I get that right?
Yes. Yes.
And your HR team has been responsible at making sure that that happens.
That is correct. So I'll give a couple examples. We've had to furlough employees.
Yeah.
We've had to only do a small number of layoffs. However, whatever communication goes out to the active employees, I send to the furlough employees. And then every Friday, the HR team, myself included, we have a group of employees that are furloughed that we are responsible for. We literally send them text messages on Friday just to say, hey, I'm checking on you. We're checking in. Are you okay? Do you need anything? And that has closed the gap for those being out, because so many of those employees, we're going to have to recall. You know, they're still RDS employees. We still very much care. How are you? How are you doing? And so it sounds insane that we are able to connect, but we make it a point. Friday afternoons are somewhat light. And so everyone blocks time on their calendar. I do it too. And I tell the team, I know it is challenging, but try to send somewhat of a personal message. Don't send a group text. Let's keep our employees engaged. And so far, this is how we've been able to do so.
That's truly remarkable. And well, it is. And I know that you know it's what kind of effort you're putting into this, but
Really?
you know, it would be so much easier, not more effective, but so much more efficient to go, okay, look, this is a great idea. We'll do a group text or a group email. But no, you and your team are dividing and conquering to do one touch point on Fridays, at least minimum. You're still valuable. You're still important to us.
Yes.
We haven't forgotten you. Do you need anything?
Yep. Every Friday. And the mass email, as an example, our president locally for RDS sends a weekly video message to all employees. And I take that message and I do a forward of a mass email for that, for the furlough employees, but I want them to hear from him every week. And then any kind of communication we do a lot with wellness. We have a partner, 2 partners, and so we send that to the group. And then the Friday text is just a, hey, did you get the email? Make sure you watch, you know, look at all the wellness things we have for next week. You know, every day of the week, there is a different class. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, there's cooking, you name it, our wellness partner has it. And so I even tasked the HR team with, you need to pick one this week, and I want us to talk about it on our Friday call. We have daily calls every day at 1:30. The HR team has a huddle. What's going on in your region? What do you need from me? Or I'm giving direction because something new is rolling out, so that the HR team can stay connected. And again, our cameras are on, and sometimes I don't have makeup on, but you know, the team, it builds us, builds the camaraderie. We're cohesive. And we get a lot done because we are planning for the next day or planning for the next week. So the touch points, yes, at times it is challenging, it's exhausting, but you know, when we get to pick up the phone each week over the last probably 2 or 3 weeks and recall people, they're energized, they're engaged, they're excited to get back to work, and that is what is making the difference. So those Friday text messages where your thumbs are moving and you're tired, you understand why we're doing what we're doing. And the team has been very supportive of that. So we will continue.
Well, the results are speaking for themselves. There are some things that we just can't put efficiency over effectiveness.
Very much so.
What about employees that perhaps haven't been able to adapt and they aren't performing? Have you guys had to deal with that? And what's your approach to that?
We do. In a normal circumstance, with the employee being in the office, not having as many distractions or things that would prevent them from being successful, we would manage a very different way. You know, we're coaching, we're counseling, we're disciplining, and unfortunately, in some circumstances, you end up at a termination. But because of the circumstances, we work a little bit more closely with the employee. So as an example, for Southern California, the HR manager in SoCal will work with that manager and say, okay, where are they falling short? What can we do to help them, you know, improve? And then that manager, along with that HR manager, will deliver that message. It more often than not, the initial now really is a verbal conversation. We notice this is happening. Are there distractions at home? Are there things that are preventing you from getting your work done? And talking through that and creating some form of plan or strategy.
Yeah.
To help them improve. And then we do regular check-ins. More often than not, we have been able to find ways to help that employee improve. We have a couple that are probably, or a few, that are on the cusp of an actual formal corrective action. But again, we are trying to be understanding and mindful of the fact that this employee has never worked from home. The structure, they may still be learning. So we're helping to coach and guide. And then if we end up in that, what would be deemed as a negative place, then we'll manage accordingly.
Okay. So you've really adapted a flexible strategy to performance management.
We have, and we have to some degree in this climate or environment. Because so many of our employees, although we can train and coach and give suggestion, this is very different than most people have ever experienced. And so we want to do everything we can to help support them and get them back in a good place.
Yeah. Oh, talk to me a little bit about your internal team, your executive peers, your peer group, how are you guys coming together to make these strategic decisions, including who to keep and who to furlough, and the expenses? So you get the idea.
Sure.
How are you guys managing?
So that executive team has a call every Friday, and we talk through region by region what is happening, revenue, budget, challenges, concerns, builders, etc. And so that really does set the stage for us to have that additional conversation. So when I'm having conversation with those VPs and our president, and I'm hearing, okay, we're looking to potentially do here or there, I can then structure the HR initiatives based on some of that, more often than not more strategic than what we just hear on that call or talk through. As an example, we furloughed 250 employees, and over a window of time, we've recalled probably 75.
Wow.
And so now having those conversations, and we're in the midst of that now per region, per state. Look, we are 2 months into this. We have projections for June, July, August, through the end of the year. How many employees do you really believe we'll need to permanently lay off? And start having that dialogue now, so we can determine who that is, and then let those employees know. What we plan on doing is giving some notice, giving them time to prepare because they still have benefits, etc. But being very strategic with how we are going to manage that will help us to be successful on the back end. So that's the process that we're in today.
So what are some of the determining factors or some of the questions you're having to, you don't have a crystal ball. You're having, in many cases, having to guess. So what have you learned about that process that could be helpful to other HR folks in the same situation?
Sure. Just having lots of conversation regularly. Our industry, to some degree, we can predict what is going to happen month to month because it's home building.
Yeah.
If our builders say, June is going to be a slow month and into July, or we don't have any projects on the table for June or July, well, we can anticipate, again, based by region, based by even city, how many crews we will need in the field to be successful and support it. Should it be light or should it build back up? And then determining, well, if we have 50 installers, based on these numbers from our builders, maybe we only need 29 or 32 or whatever that number may be, and then managing to that. And then the internal staff, which then support the orders and the processing, etc., we can then understand, well, how many do we need to scale back to support the business effectively, but not be over budget. So we spend lots of time looking at data and then analyzing that data to then make those decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about when your leadership team perhaps doesn't always agree? How are you guys managing? I mean, you don't get to look, you guys are all working remotely as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, there's something that happens in the office when we disagree with one another, or when, we think that someone isn't on the same page. We watch their body language. We get a sense of their energy in the room. It's much harder as a remote team. How are you guys staying aligned?
Sure. So prior to COVID-19, one of the things that the HR managers did regionally, and I did locally at the corporate level, was to have monthly calls with each of our respective leaders to what is going on in your region, what support do you need, do we have performance issues, etc. We worked very hard to build those relationships. And now that we have transitioned remotely, it makes it much easier to manage the relationship and give support and direction. There is a saying within our department, and the entire HR team laughs at me, but they understand why. I have always told them, do not step into anybody's house unannounced. Pick up the phone and call and say, we need to have a conversation. Here is what we're looking to do. We need feedback from you. Get the buy-in from that leader, and then we'll be able to execute and manage whatever we need to manage. So they live by that philosophy.
Yep.
They do that, and then we find a way in those calls to become aligned and then do whatever we need to do. They don't always just agree and move on down the road, but we talk through that. We have a group in Arizona that has now returned to work. I thought it was a little early, but business needs dictate that we did that. So getting on the phone and speaking to those two senior leaders, walking through the whys and what we need to do to support them, then HR can manage to that and do it very effectively, and it's very clean. It takes a lot of work, but the communication, just continuing to keep them engaged and involved and having those conversations has helped to maintain that alignment so that we can be successful, whatever it is they need to support their region. And they've been great about it.
So that brings me to the whole re-entry conversation. Can you share with us do you have a formal plan about, the re-entry plan and how to keep people safe and all of that?
So over time, when this first started, we created a protocol just as a playbook for managers. What do you do? How do you do, etc. A protocol for what a manager should do if they have an employee that tests positive. What do you do if one of your employees has been exposed to someone that's positive? And so throughout this process, we continue to create these protocols. So re-entry, we have an employee protocol, what the employee should expect or can expect when they return to the office. It could be anything from the temperature checking before they enter the building, to sanitation of their equipment when they bring it back, their desk area, what the company is doing to sanitize high-touch areas regularly throughout the day. We have a protocol for everything. But because we have spent the time to create these protocols, it's a seamless process. We had a group return yesterday in Arizona, and a smaller group today, another group tomorrow. But when you train the employees on what to expect, and we do that each time we have a group returning. We have not done it massively as a company. I don't want to create panic by sending a return to work protocol. The entire free world would say, wait a minute, we're going back. So we do it by department, by location, and we get on a call with the manager first. We walk them through what their responsibilities are, what they should expect, and then we get on a call with their team and we walk them through the employee protocol. So by the time they are on site to walk in the door, they're fully educated, and we yet, knock on wood, haven't had any hiccups yet.
That's excellent.
So structure.
And you guys are using like a Zoom meeting for that? Or
We do. We use Microsoft Teams, but same thing.
Yes.
And we just walk them through. They all get a copy of it. We literally go line by line. We open it up for questions, which of course there are many. We make sure everyone is fully educated, fully comfortable with what this process will be, and we move forward. Same thing for safety ambassadors. We have to train them on social distancing, how to take an employee's temperature. It is always a manager. So we're mindful of medical things. If an employee tests positive or has some kind of temperature that they're not allowed to go in the building, what do you do? These protocols are so specific, line by line by line. More often than not, a manager would not need to pick up the phone and call HR because everything they need is right in front of them.
And where did you pull these protocols from? How did you create such a,
So I'm laughing my head, which sounds crazy, but you go to the CDC website and you look at what the CDC is mandating. You think about your organization and your locations and what will work, entry points, which are exit points. Structuring it by building has helped us to be successful and will be as we continue to return employees back to work. But you really have to think about your group and what is going to work. What works in California will not work for us in Texas. Very different buildings, very different structure, very different people. So we just went location by location by location and created the protocol so it's effective and it works for that group of employees.
And talk to us a little bit about compliance with the protocol. How and I know that folks you're really just beginning to open up, in some of these other areas. How are you seeing folks comply? Are you having to deal with compliance?
So we have a field of people who are what we consider safety ambassadors. They have been tasked with making sure or ensuring that we are following those protocols. What happened in Northern California initially is we were deemed an essential business. OSHA started visiting job sites, not specifically ours, but others locally, recognized or identified that people weren't following the social distancing and shut everything down in NorCal. And so we use that as an example for our employees nationwide. Number one, your health and your safety comes first. But in order for us to maintain operations and stay open, we have to adhere to these things. And so far, we've had a violation here and there. I mean, people aren't perfect, but for the most part across the nation, because we have designated individuals that are on job sites to check, remind, encourage. They do safety huddles in the mornings when they get to the job site, just to make sure we're compliant, but we continue to emphasize the fact, forefront, your health and your safety comes first. And then employees generally stick to that because they know they're going home to a family. Your health is important. And then we explain the mandates. But the CDC has been very helpful. I'm also part of a team, a crisis response team at our senior executive level at our holding company. And one of the members on that team is actually internal legal counsel. So anything that doesn't pass a smell test, I'm on the phone with him to get guidance just to make sure we're aligned across the board.
Well, that brings us to an interesting dichotomy that you mentioned earlier. What's working in California is not necessarily going to work in Texas or Florida, or some of our other places. And one of the things that we're seeing is that some folks don't want to wear a mask, for example, and some organizations are requiring it. What is y'all's policy, and how are you, making sure that folks, whether they want to or not, are in agreement with the policy?
Yeah, our field employees, it's mandatory. All of our builders mandated that. So for that group, very easy to adhere to, because if you don't have it on, you can't work. So that has been very simple. Because we don't have a lot of people in the office today, and the whole 7 that are in Anaheim are so spaced out in the building that we have not required them to do it yet. We've explained, look, this will probably be coming. but we've closed our lunchroom, one person in the bathroom at a time. So we set those protocols in facilities to help manage to some of that. But on the back end for the field employees, we did put a policy in place. If you are found without a mask, you will be sent home and you will be written up. Driving that message home, and again, that's harsh to some degree, but we want to make sure employees understand this is mandatory. There is no room for error. You must adhere to this. So all of those employees were given that. They signed off on it, so they understand this is the standard today. They must adhere if they want to work. So far it's been okay.
And I think it's something that you've said several times throughout our conversation is about when the protocol is, here it is, here's our policy, it is written, now we're going to talk about it. Do you have any questions? That's very different than, here's the email with everything you guys need to adhere to. Hope it works out because you might be in trouble if you don't, not sure because we haven't really written. And I'm being a little facetious, and I don't mean to be because, companies we're all doing the best that we can, but I'm seeing some companies kind of roll it out with a little more, confidence in human nature than perhaps we should be. And so just to put an asterisk on my takeaway from our dialogue about this is the work that you've put into writing out the policies and ensuring that it's communicated and opening that two-way dialogue is helping keep the compliance where it needs to be.
It really has. And again, that's not to say, all our DS employees are perfect, but the baseline is there. The standard has been set. And then we hold our managers accountable to hold their employees accountable. So there's two layers to this, which also helps us manage as an organization to make sure that we don't run into trouble, because the more that each state seems to be opening up, the more we seem to be seeing OSHA everywhere. And again, it's not just to do it because OSHA is present or could show up, but we just make sure employees understand the seriousness of it, and putting it in a protocol/policy form makes it very concrete for them, because in past practice, this is how we roll things out. So this feels no different to them, and they know that they're held to this standard.
Well, that's something that every time I've spoken to an HR professional like you, some of the key takeaways has been our preparations ahead of time have had so much to do with our ability to respond effectively and efficiently now. Yes. Even to what you just said, which was, because we are systematic when we roll out a policy or roll out an initiative, people come to expect it's going to be written down. There's going to be very specific ways in which we're going to manage this. Do you have any questions? If not, great. Here we go. Here's your forum. So people come to expect, oh, here's the policy. It's masks. Okay.
And that's really how it has been. Making sure our employees understand the expectation, understand the standard. This way, it is very easy to, not easy, it's much more structured to manage the behavior. Yeah. When this is what they are used to with everything else. So yes, COVID-19 is brand new for all of us, but RDS, this is how we manage to a policy. So, okay, it's a mask today, it'll be temperature checking in 3 weeks. Right. And so just be very clear with employees. As an example, for our employees that return from furlough, we don't know if we aren't going to have to furlough them again. So they get a letter and it's documented. You're returning from furlough. Here's your start date. And then there is a disclaimer. We might have to, based on business needs, furlough you again. Well, now that we set the expectation, okay, I might go out again, it's not so much of a shock if it happens. So getting ahead of these things, and again, you can't think of everything and not everything has happened before, but just trying to be strategic with how you manage each one helps you to be more successful the next time around, or even just with the process that you have at hand. So far, so good.
Well, and what I'm hearing you share is really consider if we were in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
How might we take coming back to work? Oh my gosh, I'm so
Right.
excited! I get to come back to work, and instead of just push this out the door, let's get this done. You guys are
Right.
taking a moment to say, what else do we need to communicate here
Mm-hmm.
for
Very
full
much so.
transparency?
Yeah, very much so. And that is something that I have to commend our president for. He is so transparent in the weekly video messages. So much so, he talks about his bad haircut and shows a patch in his head where he missed. But just talking to the employees, yes, it's recorded, it's not live, but the employees connect with him. And recently, this week, his video message was a Q&A. We solicited questions from active employees as well as furloughed employees, and he spent the entire video question and answer, and just was very open and transparent about where we are and what we are looking to expect. Many of our employees reached out to me after and said, "Can you thank him?" I said, "No, you thank him. He'll appreciate that reach out, that contact, but it closes this gap, and it just gives people information. We can't predict the future. We don't know what is going to happen, but we'll give you what we have today. If that changes, we'll tell you what it is tomorrow." And that has worked very well for us throughout this process.
And when you say worked, what's the measurement of success in that?
So we solicit feedback. In this crazy time, we're still soliciting feedback. What's working? What's not working? What do you need more of? What can we do better? And then I share that detail, whether it be a regional VP or a department manager. "Hey, I spoke to this employee on furlough today. She said she was looking for," and just helping coach and guide, but it's that information loop, that feedback loop. We are working diligently this year to really focus there. And so to hear that come from our president, and then for each of our managers to adhere to support that, for HR to fully support that and help managers to get engaged in that, then we can start to gauge what went really well, what do we need to improve upon today, and then how do we look at this, heaven forbid we go through this exercise again, to do it better. And so that's what we consistently do. That daily call with the HR team does a lot of that. What happened with your furloughs? You had 70. How did they go? What could we do better? What went really well? And then we use that as we've had to do this throughout the US. We always have a pilot location or region with whatever we do. We'll pilot it somewhere, even a process or a policy. Same case scenario for this. We just look at what's working, we improve upon that. What's not, we look to make it better, and we do it quickly because we're always under the gun with COVID. Things are shifting constantly, and so we want to make sure we stay ahead of it, or do the best of our ability to stay ahead of it.
Well, and that's something that you said, that it's the communication, the constant communication. It's also the meetings. A lot of folks, myself included, I sometimes have meetings that we solve the world's problems, but then after that there's not often, sometimes those solutions get lost in, it's 60 minutes, I gotta go. How are you keeping your meetings effective, productive, so that there's something accountable after those?
So within the HR department knows each day we bring to the meeting anything that has happened that did not go well. We need to talk about that. And then also we're planning for this next process that we know will be next week, the week after, or 3 weeks out. So we have dialogue about both daily. We block an hour. So far we've been able to stay within that window, but we are very effective with what is the agenda, what do we need to address, and then the recap of, okay, want to make sure everybody understands, here's what we're doing with this, here's how we're doing it, here's when we expect to do it. And I generally will outline that in an email and then send it to the group afterwards.
That's great.
But everyone stays on track because there is an agenda. We don't just go in and go, hey, how's your day today? You know, it's very purposeful. And we have to be effective because something is coming that we need to either prepare for or manage better the next time around. So it's a lot of work. The daily calls, I used to think weekly calls were too much, and now we're on the phone every day. But these calls are so effective for us as a team. What happened in Arizona, NorCal's getting ready to do it. Oh, that happened? Okay. And I give them, look, this happened today. NorCal needs to prepare for these 4 things. Let's get these in line because Texas is next.
Yeah.
And we manage that way.
That's great. I wanted to share something earlier when you were talking about just the Friday check-ins with all employees and furloughed employees and the amount of communication. Sheila wrote, that's a really great way of making furloughed employees still feel like a part of the organization.
It's very true. And thank you for that. You know, it tugs at your heartstrings sometimes when we have an employee who says he has no family here. The only thing he had was his garden, and he's literally putting crying faces on the text message back to one of our HR managers saying, I was depressed for a week and your text brought me out of this place. I mean, the whole HR department was on the phone in tears, but it just speaks to the connection and how people like to feel valued. And we value our employees. You know, this is a very hard situation that I don't think anyone really could have anticipated would go this way. And it's a negative impact. You know, yes, there's unemployment and, you know, many people received a stimulus, but it can't secure long-term stability and people are fearful. And so that connect once a week gives hope, if nothing else, on the soapbox. But that's what we want to do. We want to be supportive. We want to connect to make sure our employees know, you know, if it could be different, you would be working. And we're going to do everything in our power to get you back to work without promising anything, but letting them know we care. So far, it's been very effective. And I hear from people and they appreciate it.
Well, and I only have 2 more questions. One is you mentioned a wellness program. A lot of organizations are cutting wellness programs at this time. You know, as a look, we've got to cut the fat across the board. You guys had to furlough employees, and yet you didn't cut a wellness program. Talk to us about why that was important to you.
So one of the things that we negotiated, our benefits enrollment, our new plan year was effective May 1st. One of the things that I have pushed for the last few years is in fact a wellness program. You know, I don't know if everyone will do yoga on a Saturday or a Friday, but someone as an employee or their family member might benefit from that. And so we pushed to create this and make this whole. What I also asked our benefits manager to do was to go out and seek wellness groups that would be willing to give us a 90-day trial for free to test their program. So many jumped on the opportunity. So if I can share that with the group, I will share who offered us the free wellness.
Yes,
And so we have multiple avenues for employees to utilize, take. And I think it's important, you know, when you're sitting at home and you're used to the hustle and bustle of work, people can go mentally crazy. You know, it's very challenging to just be within 4 walls. And again, we have a shelter in place, what makes it even more difficult. We wanted to provide them something. So we get creative with how we can support employees, but we love the word free when those things are being cut. And that's how we were able to provide so many resources for them to utilize during this time.
Fantastic. So this has been so rich and so helpful. You know, if you could highlight just the top ideas or things that you guys have done that you're really most proud of, what are those?
I would say just creating that structure from nothing. You know, being able to give employees the peace of mind and the comfort to know the organization is ahead of this, where so many pieces of this are unknown. I think we did that very well. And again, that employee connection, you know, using Zoom, using your camera, staying connected, having conversation, doing it regularly, being very informative. Those things have helped us to be successful with this process. If I could bullet point just a couple of them, that would be it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tina, if folks want to get a hold of you, may I share your contact information?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
When I'm going to share my screen. Folks, if you want to get a hold of Tina, you can find her on LinkedIn and Tina Mitchell Garola. You can also, there's her email on the screen, tgarola@resdesign, as in resdesign.com. And Tina, this has been really informative, and I know that a lot of folks are going to hear this in the replay and that joined us today and really take away a lot of value. So thank you for sharing.
I'm glad. Thank you again for having me. My pleasure.
Awesome. All right. All the best, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Stay safe and healthy, everyone.